All right, good morning. Or I guess good afternoon if you're on the East Coast as well. My name's Ken Shaw. I'm CEO here at SOS Online Backup, and welcome to an ongoing series of webinars that we do here at SOS for various audiences, but most typically existing partners and people who are considering becoming partners of SOS. In terms of the structure of the webinar, there'll be a presentation which will go for roughly 30 minutes, followed by a Q&A. We'll go through SOS's company history. We'll look at the backup and disaster recovery industry as a whole, and then pivot and look at both the problems that the traditional backup technologies have had and how online backup solves those problems. Then we'll turn and look at the SOS partner model itself, how VARs and MSPs can participate in this new online backup business that's emerging, and then we'll turn to Q&A. In terms of who the target audience for today's presentation is, it's really either existing SOS partners, of course, but also prospective partners who are typically IT shops, ISPs, independent software vendors, MSPs, and VARs, anybody who's selling IT services and products into the consumer, small business, or enterprise markets. There'll also be a Kindle given away today to one lucky viewer. So stick around until the end of the webinar for details on the promotion code for that Kindle and how you can go in the running for that. All right, so just briefly on who SOS is. I presume that most of you are at least passingly familiar with who we are and what we do if you're on today's webinar, but we're a company that's always been focused on online backup. We were founded in 2001 back in Australia at a time when the online backup market globally was very much a nascent market. It was in its infancy. Since then, we've seen the industry grow tremendously, and SOS has grown fairly tremendously as well. We're different from most online backup companies in two key ways. The first is that we're a very technology-heavy company. There were really three companies that came onto the scene as major online backup companies back in '06 here in the US, Mozy, Carbonite, and SOS. And between the three of those, SOS was always the most product and technology focused. Carbonite's very much a marketing play, and Mozy's a bit of a mix. The second thing that sets SOS apart is our focus on the channel. So more than 80% of SOS's revenue comes from our channel partners. We focus on selling online backup as a platform. It's a platform as a service play that we provide to people like you to allow you to launch your own online backup service for your customers. We've got more than 500 white label partners now and more than 1,000 partners around the world. We're a global firm. We're in 4 separate countries and have 150 employees around the world. More than 3 million customers have been on our grid. I just point those things out by way of emphasizing that we're certainly not a young startup. We're not likely to be going anywhere. We've been doing this for a very long time. And this last point, the fact that we've grown 300% since 2009, this is not really a comment about us as much as it's a comment about our partners. Given that most of our revenue comes from our partners, the growth that we're experiencing is really because our partners are having success selling online backup to their customers. So that's what today's webinar is all about. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll have a good sense of what it takes to get into the online backup business. All right, so in terms of where SOS focuses, we are very much small business focused, and that is both through our direct sales, which is a very small part of our business, but primarily through our partners. So most of our partners focus on selling to small to medium businesses. We do have some partners who focus on selling to consumers and some partners who focus on selling into the enterprise, but SMB makes up the vast preponderance of our partners. And this slide really captures what it is that we're all about. We take all of our technology and know-how and expertise in the online backup space. We then run that through the filter of your business, so we, not just from a branding standpoint, but from a bundling and pricing standpoint, to help you launch an online backup service for your customers that allows you to drive incremental revenue that you can earn at a very high gross margin on a recurring revenue base from selling backup as a managed service. Here on the screen, we've got a few examples of the type of rebranding that we do. So on the right, you can actually see some examples of rebranded PC software, whereas here at the bottom and on the left, you can see pieces of marketing collateral. This is actually a one-page product slick that has been rebranded for one of our partners. So that nearly anything you see in the SOS universe can be rebranded to your business. All right, so let's look briefly at the traditional backup technology landscape. And this is most relevant because it gives you a sense of what you're going up against when you're selling backup. In the consumer space, you're generally selling your solution into a void. So most of your consumer customers will not have adequate backup in place. If they do have backup in place, it's usually a hodgepodge homegrown solution of some software, some hardware, often as simple as just a USB flash memory key, which provides for very poor backup coverage. Obviously, off-site backup's not common. So if your customers are primarily consumers, then you're generally selling into a void, and there's quite an opportunity there. Online backup is simple, it's cheap, it's reliable, it's secure. So consumers, very much an attractive market for this product. In small business environments, what you'll be up against is slightly different. Generally, small businesses do have some sort of backup or disaster recovery solution in place. It's rare for them to have nothing, but what they have is often inferior. So traditionally, we see some hardware and some software and some labor that go into an overall small business solution. The most common solution still today in small business is on-premises tape-based backup. We've seen on-premises disk become quite popular in the last decade, but on-premises tape is still the leading technology. In the enterprise, you've got a similar structure. It's still a tripartite approach of hardware, software, and labor. But you've then also got a very heavyweight implementation phase that can be quite expensive as well. When we look at online backup, we still have all those same elements under the hood. We've got software and hardware and support and services, but we wrap it all up in a cloud offering that you can sell to your customers on an easy monthly subscription. We're seeing pretty significant declines in tape sales. So the Santa Clara Group is actually, which tracks various metrics, including tape sales in North America, is showing that tape sales have shrunk from nearly $2.5 billion down to $1.5 billion in the last 3 years. So we're seeing rapid decline of tape. And what's replacing it? Well, generally, cloud backup and online backup is replacing it. We're seeing pretty massive movements of enterprise IT into the cloud, and we've seen for several years now, consumers and small businesses have been moving to the cloud in droves. A recent survey by CTO Edge actually has more than 70% of CTOs saying they're going to move all or part of their backup load to the cloud in the next 5 years. So quite a large percentage of the industry has already earmarked the cloud as the final destination for backup. So looking at the economics of it, we'll look in more detail at this in later slides, but generally online backup not only provides a much better technology platform for backups and a much higher quality backup for your customers, but it's also cheaper. So taking doing a comparison of a small business deployment of online backup versus tape-based backup, the tape solution, and this came from one of our partners actually, the tape solution had an initial capital cost of $6,100 and a 5-year cost of $9,130. The same environment being backed up with SOS technology had an initial investment of $1,000 required with a 5-year total investment of $5,000. So on the first year's numbers, you're talking about a 16% of the cost of tape-based backup. And what's really interesting to this for you here as resellers is the margins involved. So you would think, given that the revenue amount has dropped so much, that your margin would decrease. But actually the opposite is true. With online backup, you can earn 50 to 60% margin. So in this scenario, the partner ended up making 5 times as much money with online backup as the partner would have selling tape-based backup, because on hardware, you're generally making low single-digit percentage points as margin on the product as you sell it through. Whereas with online backup, 50% is a reasonable goal or a reasonable expectation in terms of margin you can drive. And so looking at some of the benefits of online backup over hardware backup, and I'll just spin through these, but you'll be able to get this presentation subsequent to the webinar. It'll be emailed to you. Deployment with hardware backup, it's IT staff's involved. It's usually heavy capital equipment, $6,000, $7,000, up to $10,000 is typical for a small business environment. With online backup, there really is no deployment phase. It's software you simply push out across the network, and now everything's protected. Coverage. With coverage, hardware backups always had big problems. So let's take laptops as an example, constantly moving in and out of the network, very rarely being adequately backed up. The individual users of the laptops don't back up properly, and because they're not connected to the network, they're generally not being involved in the daily centralized network backup that's occurring, and you can't very easily back up across a VPN. So laptops have traditionally been a major pain point in terms of comprehensive backup regimes. With online backup, all that pain goes away. doesn't matter where the laptop is, it's always connected to the backup cloud. So online backup really excels when you're talking about distributed user-generated data. Laptops, remote offices, mobile devices are all excellent candidates for online backup. There is no media with online backup to be carried off-site. Recovery is instantaneous, so you can recover all of your data immediately. You don't need to do a 4 or 5 or 6 day recovery the way you have to with tape. Security, all of your data is encrypted with military level encryption. We've got government customers, banks, large financial institutions that are all customers of SOS. Hardware-based backup generally does not have good security baked in. That's usually something you need to do over and above your traditional backup solution. In terms of access to the data, with online backup, you've got worldwide access through any device. So I can use my iPhone and I can access all of my computers through my iPhone in real time. And that's something that is simply not possible with traditional backup solutions at all. From a management standpoint, hardware-based backup is quite time-intensive and generally is the domain of IT staff, whereas with online backup, IT staff aren't required. The domain of IT staff, whereas with online backup, IT staff aren't required. If your customers are small businesses who do not have dedicated IT staff in-house, for example, then that's no obstacle for using online backup. Again, it's simple desktop software that just gets installed on the PCs that you want to protect. Cost we've covered, and then margin we actually talked about on the previous slide, which is that with hardware, resellers are typically making low single-digit margins, whereas with online backup, you can look at 50 to 60% gross margin as a reasonable expectation. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is help you convert backup from being a pain point for your customers and a cost center for your business into both a sales and a profit center for you. All right, so just a couple of more slides on industry trends, and then we'll turn to the technology itself. One of the most common questions we get at these webinars is, how big is the total online backup opportunity, and have I left this too late? Have I missed the boat, so to speak? And the answer is, very briefly, excuse me, we still have a long way to go in terms of the growth of the industry, and you definitely haven't missed the boat. The overall online backup industry today is at roughly $1 billion in sales annually. It's projected to grow to be $6 or $7 billion at its full maturity. So the market still stands to expand to 6 or 7 times its current size. And we're seeing the fastest growth right now in the small business consumer sectors. Enterprise hasn't yet adopted online backup in any major sort of way, but we expect that to start to happen in the next 24 to 36 months. So it's a very good time. The market has proven itself. This is no longer an early adopter technology. It's becoming a mass market technology. But there's still a lot of opportunity ahead for you to take advantage of. All right, so let's turn and actually look at the core technology itself. And this is often the part of the webinar where we get the most questions. We haven't had any questions so far today, which is unusual. So I'd encourage anybody who's got questions on any topic really to ask them and use the questions tool of the GoToWebinar software to type them out, and I'll answer them as I get to them. All right, so at a high level, the SOS product platform has always been built around 4 key concepts: protect, access, share, and manage. So protect is really hardcore backup and recovery. Access is that concept I referenced earlier, the ability to get at all my data straight from the SOS cloud. Sharing is then getting that data out of the cloud and getting it to either friends and family or to colleagues in a work environment. And manage is really very focused on resellers and IT guys in large enterprises. Our management platform is all about being able to manage hundreds of thousands of PCs that are running the backup software with policies and push-based management and alerts and reporting. And that's our Pulse product. So and we'll talk more about that later. In terms of going through some of the features of the product, I'll just cover some highlights in today's webinar. There's too much to cover in detail, but the product's got continuous data protection built into it. You can access your data from anywhere. You can share with anyone. You can stream media, whether that's to a browser or straight to a mobile device, so I can play my music from the cloud right to my Android. Local backups integrated, so the full local backup engine. You don't need 2 backup tools. Built-in archiving. We'll talk more about that in a second. Unlimited devices, so you can have as many devices connected to SOS as you like. Timeline-based recovery, Sarbanes-Oxley and HIPAA-compliant backup, 11 data centers around the world, which we're replicating to. So a very powerful technology stack. And I'll talk in a little more depth about some of my favorite features. Unlimited computers is a good one. If you're familiar with the offerings from other companies, they all charge license fees per seat. So if you've got 20 computers that need to be backed up, there'll typically be a cost associated with all 20 PCs. With SOS, there is no per PC cost. So it's far more affordable. You just have to worry about the amount of data that you're backing up. And that then lets you manage many PCs all from one individual account, which is an extremely powerful way of seeing all of your data and being able to manage and access data from an entire office, for example, from one centralized interface. Free local backup, I mentioned this, but generally we encourage using multiple forms of backup, having full backups on site for very speedy recovery, as well as having your most important data being pushed off-site. And you can do that with the tool. There's a full local backup engine built into the product. In terms of some other key features, our physical media upload service is quite popular. So if you've got a large amount of data to push, you can ship it to us on a hard drive and we'll actually upload that for you. But then the most important three features for me are around recovery, versioning, and archiving, these middle one and the bottom two. And I think one of the best ways I can talk about this is to actually show you it in action. So first and foremost, our recovery engine's timeline driven. So if you can see here on screen, and I'm not sure if my screen sharing is set up appropriately, hopefully you can see the SOS product in the foreground. If somebody could just confirm that on the questions, that would be great. So on the assumption you can't see it, you can see here I've got a calendar control and I've got some search parameters. What this lets me do is specify when I want to see my data set at, right, and how I want to see it. So for example, if I just go through to, well, I'm going into the future. Let's go back and I'll select, here we are in June. So if I select June 16th, today's date, and I just click next, I don't apply any filters. Give it a moment to render. Okay, so what you can see here is I've got about 12 different PCs that I'm backing up with my account, right? And now if I go back one step, and let's say if I roll back, let's go all the way back to 2009 sometime. I'll pick July 14th, 2009. Now you'll see there were 3 PCs in my account. And if I go back even further, perhaps back to 2008, I had no data in the account. Okay, that's good to know. So let's go to October 2008. Right, that's the initial PC that I backed up. So what I just did was ask the system to show me snapshots of my data environment from 3 different periods of time over a span of 3.5 years, which is actually pretty powerful. There's no other system on the market that can do what I just showed you. And it's because we keep an unlimited version history and we've got archiving built into the product. So every time a file changes, we store a version in that cloud until you tell us not to. Of course, you can turn that on. You can turn that data retention off, but leaving it on is extremely powerful because it gives you this ability to roll back your data environment to an unlimited number of instances. With Mozy, they keep 30 days worth. With Carbonite, they keep 30 days worth. With Backblaze, they keep 30 days worth. With SOS, you've got an unlimited history, which is extremely powerful. Also, built-in archiving. So one of the least understood parts of the online backup industry is this tendency our competitors have to exclude archiving from the purview of their online backup products. What they do is pretty simply this. When you're backing up a file on your PC, everything's fine. But when you delete that file from your PC, they then delete that file from the cloud. Now the problem this causes is that anytime there's accidental deletion or data gets moved unexpectedly, those vendors then remove it from your cloud and you've lost it. Well, we did some research on our own users and we found that 60% of single file recoveries on our system were because of data loss or accidental deletion and data being misplaced, would you believe it? So actually having a feature that automatically deletes that content from the cloud is extremely frustrating for users. And one of the features that users who come to us from Mozy, for example, will highlight as one of the things they love about our service is this built-in archiving. When you take that archiving functionality we've got, along with the unlimited versioning feature, and then overlay that with our search engine, you get that powerful recovery experience I just demoed, which means I can access any file or any system. I can recover an entire system as it looked 3 years ago. I'm not aware of any other backup technology that lets me do that. Or I can actually recover an entire office. So if I wanted to, I can roll forward in this calendar. I'll pick a date in 2010. And if I wanted to, I could actually recover all of these PCs as at that date and recover an entire office environment, all from one centralized recovery interface. I can also, of course, recover just a drive, or I could recover just a folder or just a file, or even an individual version of a particular file if I wanted to. So an extremely powerful recovery engine. You can also search based on this. So going back, I could have used the content type filters to filter that data set to just show me, for example, Word docs. So if I apply that filter, you'll see now there's 4 machines instead of 5 machines. And all sorts of other ways you can slice and dice the data. But a backup is only as good as its recovery, and SOS's recovery system is the most powerful on the market. So if there are any questions about the technology, I'd love to take them now. Otherwise, I'll keep moving on to other parts of the presentation. But feel free to type any questions you've got about the product and the technology, and I'll move on now, but we can always come back. All right, so why partner with SOS? Well, first and foremost, our technology. There is no other online backup product that has as many features that are targeted at the small business market, frankly. Secondly, our delivery and support infrastructure. So for partners, we've got a tremendous depth of resources. We've got marketing training, sales training. You've got an account manager that you can always go to with any problems that you have. You have a dedicated, what we call a partner delivery consultant, who works with you for up to a month to get your product in market, consult with you on pricing, positioning, branding, product skewing. You've got your partner specialist who basically is your sales resource here at SOS. So it's somebody that you can pull into your phone calls, you can use as your sales engineer. They won't disclose that they're at SOS, they'll do it all under your brand. So you have this team of 4 people who are committed to your success as a partner here. And there's just no other backup company that even dedicates 1 person to you, let alone 4 people. So you've got an enormous depth of support from SOS when it comes to launching a branded online backup business and selling this into your customers. Third reason is, of course, high margin recurring revenue. So what you'll find is that your supply costs from SOS will be the lowest in the industry. Typically, our partners make anywhere from 20 to 60% gross margin, depending upon how and what they sell. Another thing we do very differently is we let you set the price. So you own the customer, you set the price, and we just supply you wholesale, which is quite different from the partner programs that some of our competitors, where they'll set the price and all the rules, and you just have to live within their program, and you'll eke out a 15% margin or something. We like our partners to make 50% margin. We think that's got a nice ring to it. So if there's 30,000 in online backup sales that you can make in a year, you're going to be, your margin that's going to be $15,000, $16,000, $17,000. We've got some partners who are earning as much as 80% gross margin, which is obviously tremendous. And then, of course, just generally having a white-labeled software solution helps you build your brand with your customers and helps you increase customer retention. Online backup's a very sticky product, and oftentimes partners will roll out online backup purely as a strategy to reduce churn from among their customers. In terms of the way the technology is delivered to you as a partner, everything works in your name. Our support organization can work and provide support to your customers in your name. All of the features in the products can be customized depending on what you would like to do with the product. There's nobody who can match the customization that SOS can deliver to you in terms of launching an online backup product. If you need to integrate with your CRM, we can do that, and on and on and on. And then this diagram here really covers the different angles of the SOS Partner Program. I'll just quickly go around the clock, starting with infrastructure. You can leverage any of our 11 global data centers. If you need your data to stay in a particular country, we can do that. So we've got a lot of Canadian partners who don't want their data to leave Canada. Product and software, we've spent a lot of time on the product, but everything you see can be rebranded to you. Billing flexibility. We've got a lot of different billing solutions. We can integrate with your CRM and shopping cart systems. You can just use our billing system, or we can just send you an invoice at the end of the month via usage, and you can handle billing and customer relationships however you want. Deep marketing support. We've got an entire library of marketing resources called our Partner Resource Center, PRC, which you get access to as a partner, which has got everything in it from email marketing templates to sales presentation templates similar to the ones that I'm using today. I'm actually pulling the PRC up on screen so you can see what it's got in it. Pricing guidelines to give you best practices for setting price depending upon what market you're selling back up to. A full DR plan that you can actually sell to your customers. An online backup sales guide, which is a 12-page ebook we've put together summarizing the best practices we've learned from our 1,000 or so partners over the years. There's detailed training resources, both pre-canned trainings as well as live scheduled webinar trainings that you can attend, and then of course terrific support. There's a knowledge base, there's FAQs, ticket submission, ongoing live chat, and phone-based support for your customers. So extremely deep set of resources for you to leverage as you enter the online backup business. A common question we get is, who should I sell this to? The most common way of selling it obviously is a general backup and disaster recovery solution, also as an archiving solution, a laptop fleet backup solution. So I think what you'll find is many of the businesses in your neighborhood, although they might have, or among your customers, they might have a backup solution in place for their servers, almost always, and their workstations, pretty commonly. They will almost always not have a proper backup solution in place for their laptop fleets. So laptop fleets are a massive growing part of the industry. And then all the other things we've talked about, branch office backup, email servers, application servers, database servers, etc. In terms of which markets are particularly attractive, medical and healthcare is the #1 market for online backup because of the HIPAA regulations. Margins can be as high as 80% in this particular industry. So that's, and then fin services, legal, government, and education are all rich sectors as well. All right, so I want to flip through to an example of the sort of financial performance that you can achieve when selling online backup. This is a summary of an ROI model that we've worked with a partner on putting together. And the high-level summary here is this partner has built a business with $70,000 in revenue, and their gross margin on that's 82%. So 58,000 of that 70,000 is profit for the partner. So it's a wildly profitable business that he's building using our technology. In terms of the way he's gone to market, and this is when you read our pricing guidelines in the Partner Resource Center, you'll see that one of the things we recommend partners do is follow a flat fee pricing model. So under the hood, you're going to buy from us gigabytes in our cloud. But in terms of how you on-sell it to your customers, you shouldn't on-sell it on a per gigabyte basis. You should come up with tiered fee structures. That is, for example, you might come up with a tier which is business backup for up to 5 computers, unlimited data. And you would only do that after you make an assessment of how much data they have, because under the hood you're still going to have hard costs associated with how much data they have. But in so doing, generally what you'll find is that businesses will pay $200, $300, $500 per month to back up their data, and you can then apportion storage allocations against that as necessary. And approaching pricing that way can allow you to drive extremely high gross margin on product sold. In this scenario, 82% of revenue is profit. Actually, before I leave that slide, one takeaway from today's webinar is to call in and have our team put together a ROI model for you. So the partner specialist team will ask you a few questions about your business, your customers, number of customers, types of customers, and help you build a model which can show you potential revenues, potential profits, and cash flows over time from selling online backup. Really educational process, and probably one of the best steps you can take to really understand if online backup is a good business for you to be getting into. We've covered a lot of the branding. I will just highlight this though. We've got a lot of marketing tools we bring to bear to help you sell. One of the better ones is our vulnerability scanner, which is a small app that runs on a computer and quickly analyzes that PC in terms of its file types and the amount of data that they've got on that PC. And the goal of it is to allow you to assess the amount of data and effectively the opportunity. We call it our vulnerability scanner because the goal of it is to convey to your customers that, hey, they've got exposure here, they're vulnerable to data loss, and they need to get backed up. You can see it here in the foreground branded for SOS, and in the background branded for one of our partners, ETTE, Online Backup. Terrific marketing tool, and just one of the many in the toolkit that we give you to help you sell online backup to your customers. I think we've covered the various support elements that you get as a partner. I will call out the training again. There's 3 different streams of training. You can attend live webinars that go for an hour and a half. There's a sales training stream, a technical training stream, and an overall online backup product and industry training stream. So very useful, and whether you're a small IT shop or a large company, there's training for whichever teams you've got on your side that you need to be trained. In a small environment, for example, a 1 or 2 man IT shop, you're going to attend all 3 streams, but in larger organizations, obviously your support team would attend the support training, the sales team, the sales training, and so forth. All right, so why partner with SOS? Our technology, our price point, our delivery and our support infrastructure, but at the end of the day, so you can roll out an online backup product to your customers that is high margin recurring revenue, built off a business of delivering powerful managed backup to your clients. So that brings us to the end of the actual presentation part of the webinar. On time for once, we usually run significantly over time. We'll turn to Q&A now, but just a few housekeeping items. The details for the Kindle giveaway. We'll draw the Kindle in the next couple of days, and you'll get an email notifying you if you're the lucky winner. And to go in the running for that, call in and quote the promotion code KDX986. It's Kilo Delta X-Ray 986. And the phone number's on screen, which is a free call number in the US of 877-896-3611. And for people calling from outside the USA, the phone number is +1 310 878 2626. +1 310 878 2626. And with that, we'll turn to Q&A. So I'd love your feedback and thoughts and comments, so don't feel restricted to just asking questions. I'd love to hear your feedback on the presentation. Is this useful? Is this good information? Are there other topics you'd like to hear more about? And while you're thinking on that, I'll answer some of the questions we've got here. So Jim asks, is the data compressed on your side to conserve space? Absolutely, Jim. We've got 2 different types of data compression. But I think the best way to answer that is also to tackle the way we handle incremental backup. On day 1, we collect all the files that you select, and we compress them, and we ship them to the server. And that can take some time. That can take a couple of days, actually. On day 2, the first thing we do is we figure out which files have changed. The second thing we do is we then go into each file and extract just the blocks that have changed, so just the binary 1s and 0s. So you end up with a tiny data payload for the second backup, often less than 1% of the total backup that needs to be transferred. And then, of course, we compress that as well. So we're doing baseline compression as well as binary delta compression, and then we are doing backup set differencing between actual backup sessions, if that makes sense. Question here from Paul. For sensitive data, depending on where the server resides, excuse me, let's try that again. Paul asks, for sensitive data, depending on where the server resides, would that country have access to the data if the government deemed national security, for example, in the US? Paul, unlikely. Possible, I guess, but unlikely. Firstly, we've got data centers outside the US, so if you're in Canada or UK or Australia or elsewhere, we can make sure your data is not going to America if that truly was a concern. Secondly, if you use the ultra-safe security option, which is a private key encryption regime, SOS doesn't have any access to your data. So we could not provide your data to the government, even if the government asked us to. Juan Carlos asks, do you tie in with Autotask? One, we've got an API which allows you to integrate into Autotask, but we have our own management platform. So you would use SOS Pulse product to manage your SOS deployments. You wouldn't use Autotask. You could integrate it with Autotask, but you wouldn't get as much power as you're going to get if you use our own management suite. Jim asks, do you employ a backup client that runs during the workday continuous backup, or do you do scheduled off-hour backup? You can do either or, Jim, depends how you configure it. So you can set it up to do CDP, and you might do that on some really important files, or you can just have it do scheduled backup. Joshua asks, what's the lowest possible entry cost to become a partner? I'm a small company testing the waters in web services with little money to invest. Joshua, we've got some subscription plans where you can start for just a couple $100 a month. But generally at SOS, volume commitments are rewarded with margin, right? So our most popular partnership program, Partners Buy, is a $6,000 package, which gets them a 50 to 60% margin on what they're selling. And that's just the most common. Doesn't mean it's the best or the only one, but it is the most popular. Juan Carlos asks, can you repeat the code? Oh, sure. It's KDX986. 986. Luca asks, are there costs involved to get started as a partner? Luca, there are some very small costs involved in becoming a partner. We've got a lot of different partner programs. If you're cost sensitive, then our subscription models are probably the most interesting to you. And then depending upon what level of partner you come in at, you can buy product from us at varying discounts. So obviously our biggest partners can buy the product from us at the deepest discounts. James asks, how do you handle Exchange and SQL databases? Do you need special agents, extra cost? And caveat here is you need to make sure the appropriate BSS writers are installed on the machine that you're backing up, but so long as that's in place, you'll be fine. Juan Carlos asks, do you work with any RMMs? I'm not sure what you mean by RMMs. Juan, if you can let me know, I'll be happy to answer. Craig asks, can you back up MS SQL databases without stopping the service? Yes, Craig. James asks, what do we do with the code KDX986? Oh, James, if you call to our partner specialist team on the phone number I listed and just let them know that you're on today's webinar and you'd like to register for the Kindle. And we're out of questions for the moment. Oh, Juan says RMM like Kaseya Enable. What does RMM stand for, Juan? I've never heard that expression before. I'm familiar with Kaseya and Enable and Autotask. Again, you could perform that integration and you could put those products together. We have a competitive product with theirs, so we want you to use our Pulse product, which is what we think a far superior product for managing backup. If you want to use Kaseya, you can, but it's not something that we recommend, if that makes sense. And we're out of questions again. My question to everybody in the audience is, was there material in today's presentation that was missing? Were there topics that you would like to hear spoken about? And that's very important feedback for me for future webinars. All right, some more questions here. Jim writes, for Exchange and SQL, you said you use the BSS model. Does that mean the backup agent can back up these without stopping services? VSS, Volume Shadow Copy Services, Jim. And yes, you don't need to stop the services to back up their data files. Scott writes, can one sign up and get all the sales info and branding before starting a subscription? I don't understand, Scott. When you sign up, you get all the branding. We go through a process of delivering your customized software, but I don't really understand. Juan asks, I might have missed this, but do you do BDR in some fashion? Juan, the whole thing is BDR. The whole the solution is a backup and disaster recovery solution. So everything I spoke about today is BDR. Eric writes, most important thing for me to know is the pricing model. What's the entry point to get the 0.41 per gigabyte per month? How much space do you need to buy? Eric, I'm not sure. The reference to 41 cents per gigabyte per month, where did that come from? Was that on one of the slides I showed, or because the answer is this: we have multiple partner programs. Different partner programs change your cost, so it really depends on which partner programs are fit for you, and that's the purpose of calling in and getting an ROI model built. That's the way the partner specialists actually determine which partner program is best for you, where you're going to make your most margin. So talk to the partner specialists about them doing a quick ROI for you, and that'll help you get an assessment of your cost per gig per year. Luca asks, is the branded site hosted on our domain or yours? Both. Well, either or, Luca. Typically it'll be hosted on your websites, but we've got some custom web package solutions where we can customize pretty much anything you want. But traditionally we give you the software and we give you rebranded portals, and then you would host all the marketing material you need on your website. Juan asked the question, how do you compare to Mozy? Well, it depends how you look at it. One, generally we've got more features and we're cheaper. So Mozy's a much bigger company than us. So in terms of how we compete with them, our focus is on providing more value for money, generally. But that's really when you're talking about selling direct. When you're talking about partners, we really do dominate Mozy. Mozy's partner program is very, very poor. You'll get very thin margins. You're effectively demoted to a low-level affiliate. It's not a true reseller model. You can't buy in bulk. You're never going to make anything like 50% margin. They've got trivial branding services. They can't customize anything. So if margin's important to you, if customization's important to you, if branding's important to you, Mozy is not a great fit. So SOS focuses on some one, right, that is correct, virtually no money. Yeah, well, so yeah, our feedback, we get a lot of partners who come to us after having been with Mozy, and they come to us mainly because of the margin they can make with us. Scott writes, do you pay for the service before our customers start using T? I think you are missing some words there, Scott. Oh, it, right. Do you pay for the service before our customers start using it? I'm not quite sure I understand, Scott. You become a partner of us and you buy software from us, and then what you do with your customers is on your end, so we don't have visibility into that. So generally, you'll become a subscriber with SOS, and your first bill will be due at the end of the month that you become a partner. Joshua asks, does your software work on Mac, Windows, Mac, and Linux? Josh, two answers. The first answer is natively on Windows and with any environment because it supports network shares, and that's actually really important. Nearly all of our competitors refuse to support network shares, and the reason is because they're charging you per machine. So they do not want you to have the software installed on this computer and then back up drives from 6 other computers, because they actually really want to get money out of you for those other 6 computers. And we hate that approach to the licensing in the industry. So one of the most traditional ways of deploying SOS is to have a backup server in your environment, and it will back up data from all the other machines and do that using MAT network drives or UNC paths. In terms of native software, we've got a native Windows application, and next month we're launching our native Mac application. It's been in beta for some time, but we've got no plans to have a native Linux application. You can back up Linux boxes, of course, over the network, and because we're the only company that supports network backup, this is really a non-issue. All right, some more questions have come in. Jim writes, I've had long file name issues with other backup programs, which is the sum of the path name plus the file name length. Okay, Jim, those must be some long file names. There's generally an OS limit. For example, NTFS has a 255 character limit for a fully qualified file path name. That is a limit that I think most backup vendors come up against. Are you talking about fully qualified paths longer than 255 characters? Okay, so if it's under that, you'll be fine with us, Jim. All right, David writes, what type of assistance do you give to partners to get their customers? I don't quite understand, David. Are you talking about sales assistance, marketing help, technical support? What type of assistance are you talking about? Yes, that is right. Yes, that is correct. You mean all of the above? Is that what you mean, or I'm confused? Okay, so if you remember in the presentation when I went to the Partner Resource Center, that is all of the marketing support that we provide to partners. And then also, if you recall, I was talking about our partner sales team and how they work with you as your ongoing sales rep to actually help you sell to your customers, so you can have them on your conference calls as a sales engineer or your backup expert. And then the third thing is technical support. Our technical support staff can help your customers as well. So on all three vectors, marketing, sales, and support, you can leverage the SOS team to work with you and help your downstream. Juan Carlos asks, so do you provide a cloud VM to restore a down machine to bring up a PC or bring up a client? Juan, if I don't really understand the question. If you can explain more of what you're talking about, or if there's a vendor that you've got in mind, that would be very helpful. If you just mean backing up VMs to the cloud and can you recover a VM back down, yes, of course we can do that. So we do support backing up virtual machine files as well as backing up from within virtual machines. Okay, I'm not familiar with them, Juan. What do they do? If you can explain what they do, I can try and answer. And while Juan's typing that out, Jim's got a question. What kind of reporting does the backup software report back daily that tells us what is happening, particularly the backup failures due to open file issues or permissions issues? Great question, Jim. So there's a couple of different ways to get reports. One is that you can actually set it up to send email backup reports. So you get an email every day with the detail of the backups that's occurred. Secondly, right from within the web portal of the product, you can actually see all of your backup reports right there, so you can get historical information, which is quite powerful. So between the email reports as well as the web-based reports, there's pretty detailed reporting information available for you. Hope that answers the question. And open file issues, by the way, are not that typical because we support open files. Sometimes they can be a bit finicky. Permissions issues is a good one, though. Permissions issues is probably one of the most common types of problems. Okay, we are out of questions again for the moment. Oh no, here's some more. David asks, what's the absolute minimum start package you offer to sign up? David, it varies every month. They have different specials and promotions. So the best people to talk to would be to the partner team. And when you call in for the Kindle, you can ask them that, and they can give you pricing. All right, well, we're actually a little bit over time. So if there are any other questions on the line or some feedback for me or comments, I'd very much like to hear what you thought of today's webinar. Otherwise, we'll move to wrap it up. I'll be available for another few more minutes to answer questions, though. All right, we don't seem to have any other questions. Well, thanks everybody for your attention and your participation. That's been very useful, and I look forward to talking to you again. And we've a couple of other questions coming in. David asks, oh, we've already answered that. Craig writes, in determining the gigabytes we have to pay for, does it include the sum of all the archival space? No, Craig, it doesn't. It's just the